Photography is not a crime.
Yes, it is a crime.
Connect TV coming to you live from the Miami studio here in downtown Miami. And tonight we have a very, very interesting episode. It's gonna be a very long episode, hopefully not too long, but it's a very complicated story that I was hoping to write, and it got too complex to write. So I brought a couple of former cops into the studio. This is Ralph and Tammy Valdez, and they're actually gonna be going to prison, supposedly. They've been convicted of felony crimes involving gun sales, and they're gonna be talking about that in a minute. But this all stems from Tammy Valdez, who blew the whistle on a bunch of other corrupt cops, who are still there, by the way, and they retaliated against her. And we've seen this, and I've seen that a lot. I know Radley Balco has written a lot about cops who blow the whistle, and they come after those cops. And it's kind of a big issue, and I think it's a bigger issue than we've seen so far. So we're gonna really hear a very fascinating story, and kind of bear with us, because this is very complex. It goes all over the place. I'm gonna let them tell it, and let's start off with Ralph here. He's a former Hialeah police officer, and tell us your story.
Well, Carlos, thanks for having us tonight. And essentially what happened was my wife and I were both career law enforcement officers for 20 plus years each. And the last agency that my wife worked for, she discovered that there was several police officers that were involved in a scheme to defraud the taxpayers of the city that she worked for.
Now she was working for Golden Beach, which is a separate, obviously a separate agency down here.
It's a different municipality in Dade County, right? She discovered that there was probably about 8 to maybe 10 police officers that were involved in this scheme to defraud the taxpayers out of money, and she reported that to her superiors on 2 separate occasions. It basically got dismissed. And later on she reported it to the city manager for that municipality and the mayor, and ultimately 7 days later she was terminated. She decided to then file a complaint with the state attorney's office down here in Dade County, who initiated an investigation, and as a result of that investigation, 3 police officers were arrested and criminally charged. There was 3 others that relinquished their police certifications in lieu of prosecution.
What were their names?
The ones that were arrested was Lindeen Peters, Omar Paez, and Giovanni Diaz were the 3 officers that were arrested.
And what is their status right now?
2 of them are still currently working in the police department. They're still pending trial. They haven't been tried criminally yet. The 3rd one, it's my understanding, still is pending a criminal trial, and as of what I just found out about a week ago, he was given his disability retirement by which is essentially paid for by the taxpayers of Golden Beach, who he defrauded.
And what was he charged with?
He was charged with grand theft, official misconduct, and insurance fraud. Right.
Okay, so go on with the story.
After their arrest, actually, let me back up a little bit. Before their arrest, while the investigation was ongoing through the state attorney's office, both my wife and I started, and our families started receiving a bunch of threats through a blog online, where
it wasn't my blog, was it?
No, it wasn't yours. It wasn't yours. It was actually another blog that's like a police-related blog that people.
What's the name of it?
LeoAffairs.com.
Yeah, I've been mentioned on that before.
Have you?
Yeah.
Okay. And essentially, what they did, they started making threats that they were going to get revenge on my wife for blowing the whistle on their criminal activity.
And what year was this?
This was in November of 2009 when she made the complaint and was terminated.
Okay.
After she was terminated and after the complaint started, she also ultimately wound up filing a federal lawsuit against the town for whistleblower violation, which ultimately later on was tried. I'll get to that in a moment. But essentially, we started getting threats. Our home was being watched. They were blogging about watching our children.
And these are the cops from Golden Beach.
We believe so.
We believe so. I mean, they didn't post under their name. They post anonymously.
How many police officers are in that agency?
Approximately 20 to 23 at the time.
Now, some of us, if you've been reading my blog for a few years ago I wrote a blog post about a cop from Golden Beach who pulled over a friend of mine, Robert, from Cop Block, and gave him the whole spiel. You can't record. We can record you, but you can't record us. That's his words. I'll never forget that. We can record you, but you can't record us. And he's still there, right? And of course, I imagine.
Yeah, he's still employed there currently,
Yeah.
and in that police
And
department.
what was his name?
Robert Ruggiero.
Right.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not sure. Did you mention why she got fired?
She was fired. Essentially, the excuse that they gave her was she was fired for not meeting probationary standards. Their probation there, which was something that was later disclosed in her civil trial, is 12 months, and she hadn't been employed there for approximately 16 months at the time that she was terminated.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go on.
So basically, after that happened, then we were, like I said, getting threats on the blog. Our home was being watched. They were posting comments about watching our children coming in and out of our house. There was one specific comment that was posted when a furniture delivery was made to our home. We were being followed by vehicles when we were out on the street. At one point in time, the windows in our vehicle were, all the windows in our vehicle were smashed out. So essentially what we did, we wound up reaching out to the state attorney's office and who was prosecuting the officers that were arrested and informing them of what happened. We also reached out to an FBI agent out of the Miami Public Corruption Office and informed him of what happened. And he was supposedly conducting an investigation into this, which as the story goes on later, you'll come to find out that he really did nothing with it.
Now you've been a cop for more than 2 decades. And we've all heard the whole spiel, like, okay, we're conducting an investigation, and I know that doesn't mean that means we're just waiting for this to go away. And one of my main questions is, okay, you've been a cop for so long, and your wife comes home. Did she tell you she's going to blow the whistle? What was your idea on that? What were your thoughts?
She had reported it first. The first 2 times that she discovered the discrepancies in the payroll, she'd reported them to the captain of the police department.
But did she discuss it with you before she went ahead and did that?
She did. She discussed it with me after she reported it the second time to the captain. The first time I didn't know nothing about it when she mentioned it to the captain. 2 weeks later, when she reported it to the captain a second time, she brought it to my attention and told me, hey, this is going on, and I'm not really comfortable with this, and these people are stealing, and I think they're trying to involve me in it, and I don't want any part of this, and I'm going to report it. And I completely agreed with her and told her that she should, because it was obviously clearly, something illegal that they were doing.
Right. Anyway, so let's not lose track here. So what's next?
After the complaint was filed with the FBI, there was other threats that were made. There was one of the officers that was arrested as a result of her complaint tried to lodge a complaint through the state attorney's office, making certain allegations that that my wife and I were involved in selling guns illegally. That was brought to our attention, and it was summarily dismissed by the state attorney's office because it wasn't, a fact that was truthful. They were just basically trying to get even with her or with us for her blowing the whistle on what they were doing and ending their criminal enterprise that they had going on over there for quite a while.
But you are a gun collector, though.
I am a gun collector. I was a police officer for 25 years, probably for about 22 of those 25 years. About 95% of my job as a police officer involved firearms training new police officers, in-service police officers, on how to shoot guns and how to use the tools that they're issued as police officers.
Right.
So I had a very large gun collection at one point in time, yes.
Okay, so...
We're both gun collectors.
Right, that's how you guys met.
Well,
Right,
we met at the police academy. He was teaching a class, and
Right.
I was taking the class to be an instructor, and that's how we met. But we're both gun collectors, so it's
Right.
not just something we do together as a hobby.
And that's eventually what they nailed you on, right? So, okay, so now we're going to continue with that. We're going to, do you want to tell your story?
No,
Or
he
you
can
get-
continue. He's doing a very good job of that.
So basically, what was going on was we were getting continuous harassment, we were getting continuous threats. Apparently, at one point in time after she was terminated, the former chief of police, who was also terminated from Golden Beach, tried to lodge an investigation against her after she had already been terminated to basically allege that she had been stealing from the city and that she, I guess, the allegation was that she had gone a period of like 3 months without even reporting to work, and that they were paying her for getting to work. That was dismissed as well.
So they're accusing her of the same thing that she accused them of doing.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. You know, and it didn't go anywhere because it was all.
Well, I mean, if you were doing the same thing they were doing, you probably wouldn't have reported them in the first place, right?
Of course.
Right.
Right, that makes
And
sense.
how am I not going to show up to work for 3 months and no one missed me?
Yeah.
So you know, it's been a difficult situation. Of the people that were named in her initial complaint, about 12, I believe was the number, out of 23 officers that were employed by that agency received what's called a target letter from the State Attorney's Office Public Corruption Unit when the investigation started. A target letter essentially means that you are a criminal target of a criminal investigation that's being conducted by the State Attorney's Office. Two of those individuals that received target letters that are still currently employed by Golden Beach are detached to a federal task force as what's called task force officers, where basically they're employed and paid for by the town of Golden Beach, but they work for a federal task force. So they work and assist, for example, the DEA, the ATF, FBI, whatever the case might be. One of those two individuals, they were both targets, the ones that are in the task force, but one of those two individuals actually owned a security company that was giving all the jobs to the officers that were arrested, the off-duty jobs that they were double and triple dipping at. It's been our position, it's been our contention that that individual is the one who apparently reached out to somebody and initiated the investigation, which led to our subsequent prosecution and conviction in the federal
Are you
case.
able to say his name?
I don't think it's a good idea.
I probably shouldn't, since he wasn't formally criminally charged, but it's
Right.
public record if because the case is closed to the state attorney's office, so you can obtain the records through the state
Right.
attorney's office, which would reflect his name as a subject in the investigation.
Okay.
Ultimately, we had noticed that the harassment had continued to progress, and we were communicating that information to the FBI agent that we initially complained to on May 5th of 2012.
And what's his name?
Agent Matthew Fowler.
Okay.
He works out of the FBI Miami Public Corruption Office.
Yeah.
On May 5th of 2012, we were leaving our home, which was a Saturday morning, early in the morning, and just before I was getting in my vehicle, I looked across the street, and there was an SUV parked directly across the street from my house, which had very dark tinted windows. And it was early in the morning, it was about 7 a.m. I could hear that the engine was running on the vehicle, and there was dew on the windows from the air conditioning being on really cold inside the vehicle. So it caught my attention, considering we've been getting all these threats that our home was being watched and being followed. I looked at the vehicle and I observed through the driver's door window, even though it had really dark tints, a red flashing light, which I assumed it was somebody videotaping me.
Yeah.
So I kind of dismissed it, walked around and did what I had to do, and before I got into my vehicle, I approached the vehicle, and when I tapped on the window, the driver was startled, lowered the window down, and I asked him what he was doing. He identified himself as a Miami police officer. And I asked him at that point in time, well, why are you videotaping my house? Why are you videotaping me? And he goes, well, I'm a police officer. And I
Did he tell you that photography is not a crime?
No, he didn't. He didn't. He,
All right.
yeah.
I couldn't resist. Sorry.
Of course.
I essentially told him when he identified himself as a police officer, I told him, well, I'm a police officer too, and I want to know why you're videotaping my house. And he goes, well, I'm not videotaping your house, I'm not videotaping you, I'm conducting an investigation in the area, and I'm just videotaping the area in general.
Now you live in the city of Miami, right?
I live in the city of Miami, right. So I asked him to see his identification. I took his name down, I took the vehicle description and the tag number of the vehicle he was driving down and reported it to the FBI agent.
Yeah.
Approximately a month later, on June 16th, we were leaving our home, and when we got on, just before we got on I-95 off of US 1, I observed that we were being followed by a bunch of unmarked undercover vehicles. We assumed again that it was somebody related to Golden Beach, either some of the ones that were arrested or private investigators that they had working for them or whatever the case was. We were going up to Broward County. It was Father's Day weekend in June of 2012. And we were supposed to have breakfast at Bass Pro Shops. And then later on we were going to go by a gun show that was going on in Fort Lauderdale. Make a long story short, I observed the vehicles that were following us. We got off of I-95 and Broward Boulevard, and I wanted to confirm it because I didn't want to think I was paranoid. So we pulled them into a parking lot where there was only one way in and one way out, and 3 of the vehicles actually wound up going in and following us, and we were able to obtain.
And how did you determine they were undercover cops?
I didn't know they were police officers. I knew that they were rental undercover vehicles.
Well, one of the things that we had a concern about was the potential of the retaliation from the Golden Beach cops that I had reported, and my thought was always they were either rogue or doing stuff on their own without the authorization of the police department because of the threats that were being made all the while. So we were more aware of our surroundings than ever, and plus we both have experience and training on surveilling people. So that's how you put 2 and 2 together, and plus everything that was going on at the time. I mean, it was continual. The harassment till this day.
But like what kind of cars were they?
Oh, they're
a couple of there was Ford Explorers. There was a Ford Explorer pickup truck, like a Ford Escape, and they all had the blacked out windows. Windshields were blacked out, the whole 9 yards, which is consistent based on our, my experience, our training as undercover police agents.
Now, tents, the illegal tent, are those illegal tents down
Oh,
here?
absolutely. The windows practically were spray painted black. You couldn't see
Right.
anything inside the vehicles. Yeah.
Okay, are police exempt from that law?
They are not.
Okay.
They are not.
So then you went to the parking lot.
We went to the parking lot with the sole purpose of having them commit themselves to going into the parking lot to confirm that in fact they were following us and it wasn't a suspicion on their part. It was actually what was going on. And then I was able to get physical identification on 3 of the vehicles, including tag numbers, which I reported to the FBI agent as well. That was June of 2012. He had been communicating with us back and forth that he was investigating who those people were and that he was looking into our complaint, into our concerns. And then we moved forward to the month of July of 2012. We are sleeping on a Saturday morning and my wife's phone rings, her cell phone rings, and it's the FBI agent at about 6:45 in the morning who tells her, hey, listen, I think we got a couple of these Golden Beach people sitting outside your house. I've got a crew of guys out here and we're watching them. What I need you guys to do is get into your vehicle and drive towards US 1 and then to I-95 like you would normally do. We want to flush them out and identify them to see who they are. At 6:45 in the morning on a Saturday, we essentially tell them, okay, give us a few minutes. We were sleeping. Let's get dressed and we'll jump in the car and do that. And we did just that. We got in the car, drove off, and my wife was driving. As soon as we get on US 1, about a mile away from our house, and we turn going in the direction of I-95, she tells me I'm being pulled over. And I go, okay, we'll pull over. We look in the rearview mirror, and it's a City of Miami police car, marked police car, pulling us over. We pull over off to the side of the road on US 1, and it was a lieutenant from the City of Miami that approached the vehicle. And my wife who's driving tells her, they want to talk to you, is his exact words, and motions to the back of our vehicle. We look back, and when we look back, we observe probably about 8 or 9 unmarked police cars with federal agents all wearing heavy body armor that says police, ATF, special agent, all this other kind of stuff, heavily armed. And then they approach our vehicle. The police officer from the City of Miami at that point just kind of walks away like, I don't want no part of this. And then they approach us, and the first thing that I say is, where's Agent Fowler, who's the FBI agent that called us in the morning? They responded, well, he's not here. And I go, well, he just called us on the phone about 10 minutes ago, and I just spoke to him on the phone. I want to speak to
Now, were these guys FBI and ATF or just only ATF?
I didn't really know at the time. They had green heavy body armor on that said, some of them just said police, others said federal agent, some of them said ATF, so I didn't really know at the time exactly who all of them were employed by. I later came to find out in their interaction that they were all ATF agents that were there at the scene of the traffic stop. The second time I asked for Agent Fowler, they told me, well, he's not here. He was just on the phone to get you out of the house. As we're saying this and we're having this conversation, I asked the female agent from the ATF, well, what's this about? What's going on here? And she goes, well, we have a search warrant for your house. And I go, search warrant for our house for what? And she goes, well, we'll discuss that later. We need you to come with us. And I go, am I under arrest? Are we under arrest? Or are we being detained? And she goes, no, you're not under arrest. We just have a warrant for your house. As we're having this interaction, there's an ATF agent searching my wife's car, who subsequently, while we're standing on the middle of the street talking to these other agents, jumps in her car and drives away and leaves us standing in the middle of US 1. Our cell phones get taken from us, and then we're essentially told to get into an undercover vehicle. We told them again, no, we don't want to. At one point in time, my wife, since they had taken her car, started trying to walk away, and she was grabbed by the arm and told her, and they told her, no, you have to get in the car and go back with us. They put us into one of their unmarked cars.
One of the things that always comes out with my readers: am I being detained? Am I free to go?
Right.
And if they detain you, they have to have some kind of reasonable suspicion that you committed a crime. What was that? What did they have?
They had nothing other than the fact that they had a search warrant for our house, which was a mile away from where we were stopped at. So they had essentially had no probable cause. They had no reasonable belief to effect a traffic stop because there was no traffic violations committed. So we were stopped illegally, we were detained illegally, we were searched illegally, we were deprived of our cell phones, our vehicle illegally, and then we were falsely arrested and put into a undercover government vehicle, transported to a gas station, and then from that gas station we were transported to our residence, where we were forced to open our residence to federal agents and basically sit under the watch of two heavily armed ATF agents for about 3 or 4 hours on the front steps of our house while they ransacked our house.
And at this point, did you know why they were searching your house, or did they even show you the search warrant?
When they got back to the house, they did give us the search warrant, and the search warrant basically was alleging that we were dealing firearms without a license, was what the allegation that was made, and that they were looking for guns, they were looking for firearms records, they were looking for computers and things of that sort, is what was listed on the actual search warrant.
Right.
So they essentially ransacked our home for about 3 or 4 hours. From the time that they stopped us, and if I backtrack for a moment, I mentioned that they took both my wife and my telephone, our cell phones. We were asking to call our attorney because as I mentioned earlier in the opening, my wife had filed a federal lawsuit for a whistleblower violation against the city she was employed by that was terminated her. And she was being represented by an attorney. We were asking to be allowed to call our attorney, and we were deprived from doing so for about 3 hours until they finally decided, okay, that's enough, we're going to give her the cell phone now and allow her to call her legal counsel, who eventually wound up showing up in our house while the federal agents were still there finishing up their search warrant. After the search warrant was done, they left, and essentially there were no arrests made, and about...
Did they take anything?
Yeah, they took our personal gun collection. They took all our computers.
How many guns? How many computers?
We had a total of about 46 guns left. That means handguns, rifles, shotguns, everything that we had, some of which were hers, some of which were mine, that we were planning on keeping. They took 3 laptop computers and a desktop computer. One of the laptop computers that was taken was never listed on the evidence log and essentially is stolen. It's still missing. They took 5 old cell phones that I had at the house. They never listed those on the evidence log either, but they did return those. After the search warrant was executed, they took some money that I had in my house. We have a business corporation that we purchase and resale at the wholesale level watches. And we had obtained some money from our home equity line to use to purchase and resell these watches, and I had it in my safe at home, and it was seized. So we provided documentation to the government through our attorneys document where this money came from, that it came from our home equity line, and after they seized it, I think it was a couple of weeks later, they had to wind up returning it to us.
So did they have access to your safe? Did they order you to open it up?
They ordered me to open it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was either that or they were going to destroy it to open it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they left after they executed the warrant, and then immediately it started. The search warrant was still sealed. The contents of what was seized out of our home was not available for public review, but almost immediately after they executed the search warrant, they started blogging about details of items that were seized from inside of our home. That
and this is on Leo Affairs, right?
Yes, correct.
And these are ATF agents?
These are ATF agents that served the warrant, but
Right.
now the interesting thing about our case, which has been interesting not only to all the law enforcement personnel that we've discussed it with, but all the attorneys that we've discussed it with, our case was investigated through the Miami ATF office. They used a magistrate judge and a judge from the West Palm Beach Federal Courthouse, and they used a prosecutor from Fort Pierce to prosecute the case. Yeah.
And Fort Pierce, how far is that from here?
That's about 80 miles from here, or probably a little bit more than that, because closer to about 100 miles from here, which is highly irregular and is.
And Palm Beach is 2 counties up.
Two counties up. Yeah. It's the opinion, and again, I don't have any hard evidence to back this, but it's common sense that if it's a case being prosecuted in Miami out of the Miami ATF office, it should be prosecuted by the Miami United States Attorney's Office, and it should be tried in Miami-Dade County.
Well, we do have a pretty significant federal courthouse here. It's,
we've got about 3 of them, from what I understand, in
so,
Miami, in the city of Miami. Yeah.
Right.
So the general consensus as to why it was done the way that it was is because essentially the Miami and Broward County U.S. Attorney's Office were probably approached with the case and decided to decline prosecution, and apparently the general consensus amongst everyone is that the prosecutor that did wind up ultimately prosecuting this case was handpicked to do so.
So they have no restriction as to where, I mean, they can chop it around, they keep chopping around till they go to Georgia, they have to?
Essentially, they have to prosecute the case, and in the district that we live in, and where the crimes allegedly were committed, which is the Florida Southern District. And they used a prosecutor out of the northernmost portion of the Florida Southern District. The Florida Southern District is on the east coast of Florida, from Fort Pierce to Key West, Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where we were at. They started blogging about intricate details of items that were seized from our house.
Now on the Leo Affairs, there's several different, every agency has their little forum. So were they doing this on the Golden Beach forum?
Primarily, it was being done on the Golden Beach forum and the City of Hialeah forum. Then subsequently, if you look through every single forum for every agency in the state of Florida, we've been posted about in every single agency's forum for the state of Florida. And it's even gone to the extent now that they have been posting threats on the Florida Department of Law Enforcement blog site and the Miami-Dade Police Department blog sites that are specifically directed at the investigators that were involved in the investigation and prosecution of the officers that were arrested from Golden Beach. They're making threats to gain vengeance on them for prosecuting.
And no one has gone after that and looked into that as well?
We have brought that attention to the state attorney's office. They are aware of the threats that are being made. What they have done or what they are doing to pursue that or investigate that.
Can you give me an example of what kind of threats?
We told you, that we were going to get even with you guys. You should have never come against you. You're going to have hell to pay for now. Things like that.
If I would make that threat to any police agency, you can be sure they're going to be knocking down my door and taking me in the heat of the night.
We also complained to the Department of Justice, and those were my exact words. I said, if it was the President of the United States, you'd be banging down somebody's door, and they're making significant threats to my family included, and about putting us away. we're going to put you away for a long time. You know, talking about money and resources and how they do it. I mean, it's all over Leo Affairs. Yeah. And I contacted Chip DeBlock myself, he's the CEO of Leo Affairs, and he said it's First Amendment right. They can talk about you all you want. And I'm like, I understand that, but the threats.
Even threats? Okay.
And threats to do harm as well. They've threatened, why don't you kill yourself, take a gun, go sit in a corner. It's all on Leo Affairs, you can see.
And they refer to you guys by your initials, right?
TV and RV.
Yeah.
That's what they call us.
They were doing that more so by the initials until after we were indicted. Actually, before we were indicted. After we were indicted, they just basically started putting our names of our children, everything on there. And it's important, you know, I guess it's important to point out that we did file a formal complaint with the Department of Justice in March of this year, the Office of the Inspector General, informing them of what was going on, the fact that there was information from a sealed search warrant that was being leaked, who only people who had access to the investigative file in the case would be aware of, along with all the other civil rights violations that took place that we mentioned earlier with the search and seizure, false detention, and everything else. And we gave them 2 binders full of supporting documentation for our claims. And essentially, what we got back about a month later was a email from the Department of Justice General Counsel out of Washington saying, well, you know, although you brought up some pretty serious concerns, we're going to let the prosecutor know, but we're not going to do anything about it because you guys are being criminally prosecuted. So essentially what they're saying is, since you're being charged with something, and even though in this country you're still supposed to be considered innocent until proven guilty, unfortunately the recent trend is that you're guilty until you're proven innocent.
Yeah.
And essentially what they said was, we're not going to do anything with this because you guys are being criminally prosecuted. So if say for example we were stopped, and in that same scenario that occurred with us, we add to the mix that not only were we illegally searched or deprived of our rights, let's say one of the police officers or one of the agents, which did not happen, but we're just using this as an example, beat us. And we went and filed a complaint with the Department of Justice, we would have essentially been told, well, we're not going to investigate this and we're not going to look into it because you're being criminally prosecuted.
Yeah.
So there's a problem there with the system, a big problem.
Was it all this surprising to you? Because for many of us who read the blog, we're very used to it. I mean, I've been through it myself, and the system is pretty rotten. And you're right. You're guilty until you're proven innocent. And so that whole innocence until proven guilty is a big myth. And you guys as cops for so long, I mean, were you surprised by now suddenly being on the other side of the system?
I've been a police officer was a police officer for like I said, 25 years, and I've seen the police culture change over that time. I've always been, in the time that I was employed in that capacity, I always was a fair person. I always treated everybody with respect, and in the same way that I would want them to treat me in an interaction. I never, you know, abused my authority. I never felt that the badge or the uniform or the tools that they gave me as a police officer put me in a higher capacity or position than anybody else. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a human being, and when I get up in the morning, I put my pants on the same way as you do, one leg at a time. So there's no reason why I should be treated at the time when I was a police officer any differently than you should be treated as a citizen. Unfortunately, that trend has started to change. And over the years, and for many, many years, I worked as a trainer in the Miami-Dade Police Academy and trained thousands and thousands of police officers. I've seen that trend changed where now essentially you have very young, very inexperienced, very immature individuals that are being hired by police departments, and all of a sudden you have, for example, a 19-year-old, which is the minimum age that you can become a police officer in the state of Florida. You give them a 19-year-old, a badge, a gun, 6 months of training, and a uniform and a police car, and you put them out there, and now they just are basically out of control. They have no life experience, they have no maturity, and that's why you
Has
see
that
a lot
always
of
been
them.
the age to become a police officer?
It has always been the age, but before the trend was usually that they would hire, if they did hire younger police officers, they would hire younger police officers with military experience or with a lot more life experience. And essentially now, with everything that's been going on throughout the country, with the economy, the way being the economy being the way that it is, a lot of police departments that had good pensions, the pensions have suffered, the benefits have suffered, and the work conditions have suffered. So as a result of that, the pool of applicants for those agencies is not as good as it used to be.
Now, what happens to your pensions?
My pension right now is frozen. My wife's pension, because she was charged with different charges than mine, is still in effect, and she can't collect it until she turns age 55 because she wound up retiring early. But
I'm nowhere near there.
the crimes that she was convicted of had nothing to do with her job as a police officer or her acting in the capacity as a police officer. My pension is frozen because when we were initially indicted, I was charged with 2 counts. One of them, which was dealing firearms without a license, which was the same count that my wife was initially charged with also, and they charged me with a second count, which they claimed that I filed a false report with a federal firearms license dealer. And the claim behind that was that I had essentially, the government claimed that I lied when I purchased 3 rifles that I subsequently sold later, anywhere between a month to 3 months after I purchased them, to 3 police officers.
Yeah.
So I was charged with that. My agency, because of what I was charged with, I was still working for the police department, and because of the fact that those charges that I was initially charged with when we were indicted had nothing to do with my employment or my capacity as a police officer, their common practice was when a police officer is arrested, if the arrest has nothing to do with their employment or their official capacity, they basically relieve the officer of duty and basically take your police powers away. And at that time, when the indictment occurred, I was working in a desk job anyway. I was an accreditation manager for the police department. So my job was essentially writing all the policies and procedures for the police department.
And now, so down here in Florida, we're very gun friendly. I mean, I've gone to gun shows, I've bought guns before.
Right.
And I didn't have to do any background check or anything. I think I had to wait 3 days and that's it. But so now they're telling you that you're selling without a license. Is that normal? Do you have to have a license, or how does that work out?
The federal law, and I've become, unfortunately, I didn't have a choice other than to become very well versed in it now as a result of this whole criminal prosecution, is written in a very gray way, and it's done so purposely so that the government can selectively prosecute who they want. There is no magic number of how many guns as a private person I can buy or you can resell. Okay, say for example, you have a collection or you inherit a collection from a family member of 1,000 guns when they pass away. You do not need to have a license to sell those guns. You can liquidate and sell those guns without a license, one at a time. 900 in one shot. However, the way that the law is written, if you are essentially making a living off of purchasing and reselling guns, you're required to have a federal firearms license. My wife and I each had 2 jobs. I worked for the police academy for 22 years. I worked as a police officer for 25 years. So essentially from at least 1999 through about 2012, I worked 80 to 90 hours a week between my full-time job at the police department and my full-time job at the police academy. And my wife had, for many years, two jobs with the police department and the police academy as well. So that was our livelihood. That's what we lived off of. Our guns were a hobby of ours. It was something that was a passion of ours that we enjoyed. We used to shoot competitively together. We used to attend firearms training together. We used to teach firearms-related courses together. So we had an extensive collection of firearms that we had acquired over the years. So getting back to what we were talking about, there's no magic number. So the government can actually If they want, if you take and you have 3 guns and you sell them, they can come after you and they can criminally charge you for dealing firearms without a license.
Now, how common is that down here? People sell guns all the time. Am I wrong?
It's really not that common.
Well, how common to sell guns without a license?
Oh, it's very
Very
common.
common.
Very common. If you go
Right.
to any gun show,
Right.
if you go to any gun show, and you will see people there who have tables set up, even today, if you go to a gun show, that are there to sell guns from their private collection and to buy guns to enhance their private collection. And they are there with the knowledge of the promoters that actually promote the gun show. And these promoters know that these people don't have a license and rent them a table.
Anyways.
So, you know, the law is very gray, and I think that, in my opinion, it was a subject that came up in our trial. It's done so intentionally, so the
Yeah,
government.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. One thing that the public needs to know also that we found out through our trial, it's very important, is that the ATF has a policy as well in place that says that they have the capability of giving you a warning letter. So if they find that you sell 3 guns and they decide, oh, we want to criminally prosecute, one of the parts of the law says that it has to be done intentionally and willfully, right?
Right.
And you have to have the knowledge that you're committing the crime. Well, the way that the ATF covers themselves is that they have this letter that it's a warning letter. So basically what they'll do is they'll come up to you, make the buy, and then they bring another ATF agent over and they go, okay, you can't do this anymore as a business. Sign here, here's your warning letter. Now if you do it again, here's
now-
the willfulness.
So now you're aware.
But
of
ask
course.
me if I ever received that letter.
Did you ever receive that letter?
No. Nor my husband.
And they do have a policy that specifically outlines the circumstances when they should use that letter and what the purpose of that letter is for, which is our particular circumstance, which would have been the perfect one.
And they tried very, very hard to keep it out of trial.
The policy.
The policy.
Okay, so we've gone, Golden Beach is really, I mean, how many agencies we have down here? Like 27, 25?
32, I believe,
32 now?
municipalities, yeah.
Yeah, and Golden Beach compared to a lot of other police departments is really small. I mean, there's a lot of money up there. How can this little agency be so influential to reach the federal level? Or is there a connection there? Or?
Well, they do have, like I mentioned before, they have 2 task force officers that were involved and were subjects in her criminal complaint that work out of the same building as the ATF investigators that investigated and prosecuted our case.
Okay.
They've been there for many years. They're still currently working there in that building in a law enforcement capacity. So there is...
Can we say their names on?
They're the ones that we discussed before. They were targets of the investigation, but since they were not prosecuted, I'd rather not mention their names, but they are on the state attorney's records, and that you guys can obtain that through the state attorney's office.
And they specifically hired a retired law enforcement officer and sent him to the IRS as a task force officer. He works for the police department, but he is a task force officer for the IRS as well. And one of the charges that we were charging with was underreporting our taxes.
Coincidentally.
Coincidentally.
Yeah.
And you told me earlier that they had not even done any audits on you.
Nothing.
So they were charging you with this charge.
We were charged
underreporting
and-
your taxes.
Yes.
Without any evidence, without any
Actually, the
proof.
testimony that the revenue agent from the IRS provided under oath in our trial was that when he was specifically asked when the criminal investigation on the tax charges began, he testified that it was in August of 2013, which we thought it was ironic because we were criminally charged in July, a month before. So they essentially criminally charged us and then began an investigation a month later.
And
when-
we received the audit the second week of our trial. They
Really?
came up to our table and basically said, okay, and now you're being audited. But we were convicted of that anyways.
Right.
And the connections in Golden Beach are bigger than most people can think. I mean, you would have to go into looking at their administration, the mayor, the town manager, who are they connected to? That's key.
What is the per capita income up there?
I'm sorry?
The per capita income.
Well, I can tell you the residents there, the homes, like I would rather use as a foundation is, I think probably 5 million and up.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a strictly residential community. I think they're based at about 300
That's
residential homes, no commercial property, no apartments, no condominiums, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So it's a very wealthy, very influential community. The mayor there is very politically connected and very wealthy. The city manager there has connections to the governor's office and several other high places, and this is public record, so I don't mind mentioning it. To give you an idea of what kind of connections he has, he, in a period of 18 months, was arrested for DUI on 3 separate occasions.
What's his name?
Alexander Diaz.
Right.
And if you look at his record, those 3 DUI arrests have miraculously disappeared.
Right.
So they're very well connected.
Yeah. So where are we at now?
Right now, we have been convicted. We were convicted on October 4th of this year by a jury up in West Palm Beach. After the conviction, our defense team filed 2 post-trial motions, one of which was a motion to request a new trial because of some due process violation that occurred in our trial. And then a second motion, which was for a judgment of acquittal on one of the counts against me because the government never produced any evidence whatsoever to support a conviction on that count, and the only evidence that they did provide was based on mere guessing and speculation by somebody who had to come in and testify on their behalf. The motion for the new trial was denied by the judge, which was expected, and the one for a judgment of acquittal on that one particular count against me is still pending and hasn't been ruled on. We were scheduled to be sentenced on December 12th. However, I believe that's going to probably be changed to sometime in January because we just received the sentencing report from probation and parole 2 days ago, and I believe from what we were explained by our attorneys, they have to give us at least 35 days for our attorneys to review those reports and file their objections and sentencing memorandum. So it's going to move it into January sometime. We're looking at probably about 7 years is the max that we're both looking at
Right.
as far as prison
Which
time
is
right now.
obscene.
So what happens then if you do get to 7 years or even 2 years or 1 year?
Once we get sentenced, we can file an appeal. We cannot file an appeal until we get sentenced, and
But we have to go to prison and then work it from there?
you will have to. Yeah, we will have to. There's options that the court has. There's the option that the court has of allowing us to remain out on bond. Pending the appeal, although that's something that's not normally exercised by the court.
And I don't think the prosecutor is going to allow that. He's made it very clear of his hatred towards us. And when you're in this kind of business, you don't take your job personally, especially as a law enforcement officer. You can't go, well, I don't like him because of the way he looks, so I'm going to go after him harder than anyone else. And that's what he's done, and he's made it very vocal and clear, as well as the lead investigator of the ATF. She made it very vocal that she was going to go after Ralph's
Is it
retirement.
because the whole whistleblowing thing, that they don't like cops basically ratting other cops out?
I think what happens is most police officers that find themselves in these situations are then pushed aside as, like the stinky kid, and there's 2 different groups. There's those who will not get involved at all and look the other way because they're so fearful that the retaliatory actions can happen to them. And then there are the others that partake in it. And in my world, there's never been any room for that. So it's a very divided community where police work years ago used to be brothers in blue. Everybody defended each other. It's no longer that way at all. And it's troublesome because it doesn't only affect us as law enforcement, but as people, the community. If this can happen to us, it can happen to you, it can happen to my neighbor. And at least we knew some of the avenues. Okay, we have to do this next, we have to do that next. And we're fighting all the way with knowledge of how to get there. Whereas somebody who's never been a law enforcement officer before doesn't have any idea where to start. Our court hearing was obscene. The 2 weeks in trial was such a violation of our due process. The government was allowed to put on a 7-day dog and pony show. They paraded around a 50 caliber rifle and stuck it right in front of the jury so the jury could have the shock and awe moment. It didn't even belong to us, but it was allowed. So we know better, but for things like that, and it was very offensive. The entire case, they lied. The reports of the lead investigator, which really is what builds her case, was not even allowed in trial. Yeah. There was so many falsehoods and misrepresentations in her reports. And again, as law enforcement officers, we know what to look for. But would you know what to look for in a report? In a police report? What is it that they are missing? What do they need? What parts of the law have they missed? What they were particularly lying about? How to put the puzzle pieces together to show that they are lying, and what we were able to prove, because on our end we were able to prove that there were falsehoods, lies, how they went about getting the search warrant. I mean,
how did they do that?
In order to obtain a search warrant, you have to have all the probable cause in order to get it, obviously. And then you take it to a judge or a magistrate, and they read it to make sure that everything is effective and in order, so that that is a legal search warrant that you can serve without violating anybody's rights. In our case, there were 2 search warrants written. There was one, it's called an anticipatory search warrant, which was basically for our car. And then the second one was for the home. And that is done by law enforcement officers who, in the interim, have a weak case. So they might want to serve that vehicle search warrant first, so that then they can have more evidence to get into, other aspects of the subject. In this case, they had already set up that secondary search warrant so that it was ready to go, but when you read it, they don't have any probable cause in there whatsoever. So what the judge does is he basically rubber stamps the first one and the second one. They do that.
So what do they say? That they have no basis, not even an attempt at probable cause?
To give you more specifics, they lied regarding a statement that they claim that a confidential informant made to me at a gun show. They claim that a confidential informant approached me at a gun show, tried to buy a gun from me, and informed me that he was a convicted felon. Well, that was a false statement, because the government gave us a transcript of the actual reporting, and in the transcript it clearly indicates that the word convicted and felon was never used or even mentioned in the conversation. But they still put that in the affidavit of an application for the search warrant to poison the magistrate judge's mind. They, for example, listed that they conducted 2 surveillances of our home to determine whether or not they saw us either putting guns in our house or taking guns out of our house, to determine that that's where we kept our guns. Well, they never saw any guns coming in and out of our house. And
this is based on their own reports.
And somebody, you have to be very skeptical if someone walks up to you and say, "I'm a convicted felon, I want to buy a gun." I guess no one's really going to do that. If they are a felon and they want to buy a gun, they're not going to just.
Exactly. Their own records contradict what they put in the report. It was clearly a lie. Yeah.
And to add to what you just said, doing our due diligence, even as private person selling our private collection, I would always feel more comfortable, and he would too. We would ask for a license and a concealed permit, which you're not required to do at all. But to go a step further, just to, for our peace of mind and the person, you can buy a receipt book anywhere and write the information of the gun on there. So in the event that something does come up later on, you can go, "Hey, look, I sold this gun. I have the receipt here, a carbon copy.
And this is the person that I sold it to."
And this is. Why would I do that if I was conducting anything illegally? Because I know that I don't have to do that. And that is not federal law. That's state
you
law.
mentioned, okay, the trial was 7 days. They had 7 days to present their evidence. And how much time did you guys have?
A day and a half.
A day and a half?
And we were cut off.
We had subpoenaed 18 witnesses to testify in our defense case. And ultimately, because of the time constraints that we were given, we were only allowed to present 8 of the 18. The jury essentially was our trial took place during the middle of the whole government shutdown, So the jury, just before they began deliberating, there was one juror who had a prepaid cruise for his anniversary with his wife, and the judge had a plane ticket for the 6th of October. He had to go to Virginia for a week to teach a course, and he made it very known that the juror and him were not going to miss their engagements. So just prior to sending the jury to deliberate, he made an inference on the record that if they were not going to come back with a verdict that same day, that he was not going to be able to bring back the jury on Saturday to deliberate because there was no money in the budget because of the government shutdown, and essentially he would have to bring them back 2 weeks later to continue deliberating.
Well, I would think that's grounds for appeal, right? Me having conducted an appeal pro se and when won it had to reverse, I think that would be perfect grounds, just that in itself.
Yeah, unfortunately, that takes time, and an appeal could take anywhere from the time. They want, just to give you an idea, for the transcripts of our trial, which went for 9 days, they want $12,200 just for trial transcripts. I think we have a very good, solid case for appellate purposes. The unfortunate part is that appeals take time, and you could be sitting in prison even though you're innocent, and then later on, that conviction gets reversed for anywhere between 6 to 12 months before you get an opinion back from the Court of Appeals, and that 6 to 12 months of your life that gets taken from you, that nobody and no amount of money can ever replace.
This is a case that should have never gotten this far, and aside from everything else, the time, the efforts, the money, the taxpayers' dollars, when they could have simply came up to us and said, here's a letter from the ATF. Don't do this anymore. You can't be a private gun dealer or seller or whatever you want to call it. And it would have been over with. But that didn't matter to them.
It's funny that she brings that up because that just jogged my memory on something. They were doing one of their undercover operations at a Fort Lauderdale gun show. And they had approached us at the Fort Lauderdale gun show and showed us, they being undercover ATF agents, and showed us a gun that they had that was a prop to see if we were interested in buying it. We were not interested in buying it, and then they walked away. The agent still had the gun in his hand, and right after he walked away, he still was mic'd up with his audio and video surveillance equipment. He got approached by an individual who coincidentally was a convicted felon. And at the time that he approached the undercover ATF agents, he tried to purchase the gun from them, and he identified himself as if he was a police officer. The agents, essentially what they did was they escorted him off the property. They gave him a warning letter saying, hey, you're a convicted felon, you can't buy a gun, even though in the state of Florida, the mere attempted possession of a firearm by a convicted felon is a second-degree felony with a 10-year minimum mandatory penalty. They let him go. And to this day, they don't know if he did get a gun and what he did do with the gun if he did get it, all because they were just focused on getting us.
So, okay, we're going to wrap up here. So just a couple of things. You mentioned something earlier that they were accusing you of stealing gun parts from Hialeah Police Department.
Correct.
And then what happened with that?
I was convicted of it, and the sole evidence that the government provided was, forget about the fact that I provided receipts for all the parts that I sold that showed what I had purchased them and paid for them. They had some guy that was supposedly an expert come in and testify, and apparently he's an expert into speculation or reading crystal balls. But essentially his testimony was that there was not even a probability, there was a possibility that after he examined photographs and a list of guns that were destroyed by the Hialeah Police Department. Now, he didn't inspect any physical evidence from the police department or from the parts that I sold. He said that there was a possibility that those parts could have come from the Hialeah Police Department. The government produced 3 chiefs of police from Hialeah that testified, the major in charge of internal affairs and a civilian representative from their business management office, who all testified. We have never had any gun parts come up missing. We have never had any guns or parts stolen. If we had anything like that stolen or come up missing, we would have reported and an investigation would have been conducted.
In the letter.
And essentially they said, we're not a victim of a crime, but they still prosecuted us or prosecuted me on that particular count. And the sole purpose behind that was because, like I mentioned earlier, they were upset that Hialeah kept me working
So you were convicted of that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that's part of the charges that you're going to be sentenced.
Correct.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Okay.
Yeah. And that's the motion that's still pending. The motion that's still pending for the judgment of acquittal has not been ruled on by the court. But if you read that and you read the motion in detail, it breaks down everything into detail and everything that they're alleging with no evidence whatsoever.
So where can people do more investigating on your case? If they want
You can look on Pacer, which is a government website where you can log in there and you can pull up all the records or public record. It's pacer.gov. The case number is 12-80234. And you'll see everything on our case there. Anybody can access it and pull it up and download all the legal proceedings and documents on there.
No, and also if they want to, we have an email set up. If they have questions, they can ask us. We're going to answer the questions because everything we're talking about
but what is your email?
Public. It's
Fight Government Corruption 2013 at gmail.com.
Fight Government Corruption 2013 at gmail.com.
Right.
Okay, Tammy, do you have anything else to say before?
I mean, that's. I think that the general public, the citizens, the taxpayers, should be appalled by something like this, because again, if it could happen to us, it could happen to anyone. And I think that it's important to mention that the taxpayers are also paying for this retaliatory acts that are being done by the government, and the use of government resources are being paid by them. And people need to understand that we still have a Second Amendment right. All of it falls in together with our case because they took all of our collection is gone. We don't have anything left. And those
You're not allowed to have guns right now?
As a convicted felon, you're never allowed to possess a firearm again.
Wow.
The system is
broken.
The system is broken, and not to get into politics or anything like that, but when you look at some of the things that have been taking place throughout the country, a perfect example is the ATF Fast and Furious operation that took place in Arizona, where over 2,500 guns were allowed to walk directly across the Arizona border into Mexico under the direct surveillance and supervision of ATF agents. And 4 of those guns have killed law enforcement officers, and numerous of those guns have killed over 300 Mexican citizens, and nobody has been held accountable for that. Nobody has been prosecuted for that.
Insane.
And to the contrary, a lot of the people from ATF that were involved in that have actually been promoted and given promotions to keep them quiet, if you will. And not even the Attorney General of the United States has been held accountable for his involvement. Essentially, when pressed to do so and provide the documents that would have exposed the scandal, he was protected by an executive order from the president's office. So there's a problem.
And you guys have family now. If you guys get sentenced, do you have kids?
Yes.
We have 2 children, yes, 2 girls.
So what happens there?
They're adults already, but I have an elderly mother. She has an elderly mother. We have family that need
not
us,
to
they
interrupt
depend
him
us.
though, but more than that, our kids are still growing. We're in this new generation, and they've grown to know us as law enforcement officers. My daughter right now is so anti-law enforcement that she's starting her own thing, and it's scary for me because I don't want her to be retaliated against. But what happens in cases like this is it changes everyone. It's changed me. Yeah. I don't believe in the system at all. I think it's completely broken. And unfortunately for me, I was looking through these rose-colored glasses of, hi, I'm a law enforcement officer, I'm here to help you, because both of us have always walked such a straight line and always been there to help the community. And now we find ourselves in this situation.
I've been a police officer for my whole entire adult life, just like she has, and my view of law enforcement and police officers is
it's despicable,
completely distorted.
And if we take a look at your internal affairs reports, what would we find?
If you look at my internal affairs report, you're going to find a complaint that was lodged against me by the mayor of Golden Beach, who alleged that I used his email from Golden Beach and to send out emails to residents of Golden Beach alerting them of corruption in their town. That was investigated by the police department's internal affairs section, and it was unsubstantiated.
So apparently you have hacking skills as well?
Apparently, I've got some hacking skills and computer skills that I'm not aware of.
So in the other 2 decades, there's nothing else in your.
There's nothing else. I mean, I think you'll probably find the counseling for an out-fault accident that I had on duty.
Yeah, I have some of those.
That's about
accidents.
the extent of it. But as far as
Nothing
misconduct, abusing people,
No.
excessive use of force, anything like that, you will not find anything like that in either one of our records.
What about your?
Mine either. Accidents, coming late to work, but as far as the public, I have commendations. I've rescued from a shepherd hanging out of a window, to saving a baby from choking on a penny. I have hundreds of commendations throughout my 20 odd years, and I have the occasional counseling sheet and the car crashes and things like that, but it's sad. I don't know what Golden Beach has in store for my file. I don't know what they've added. I do have some people that I'm friendly with there that give me a heads up every now and then to certain things that are happening, so they're going to put whatever they want in there because they can.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
I just know something jogged my mind that she said earlier. It used to be when we first started, this profession, law enforcement was a family. Everybody worked together. They protected each other so that everybody went home safely. The times were a lot different. There was a lot more violence in the streets during the 80s with all the drug trafficking and whatnot that was taking place back then. The officers all essentially watched each other and protected each other to make sure that everybody went home to their families safe at night. Now, unfortunately, that's turned. Now, the least of your worries as a police officer is when you go out on the street. When you're out on the street, you're safe. When you got to watch your back is when you're walking through the hallways of that police department from the fellow officers that you work with. That's scary. And there's no doubt in my mind that we are here today and we're in the position that we're in today because of the fact that what took place with Tammy and the fact that her complaint led to the arrest of those officers. Had that not happened, we would not be having this conversation today. We might have been having a conversation, but not about this.
Yeah, I could have been being educated about videotaping is not a crime.
You probably would have arrested me, and then when there would have
No.
been topics on my blog.
No.
No, but
Another thing is about the blogs, though. I mean, if they want to see how much these people hate us and have harassed us and the threats, they're still up on Leo Affairs.
Yeah.
So you can just go on to leoaffairs.com and my name is all over it, so why shouldn't I give props to Leo Affairs for having me all over it? My picture was pasted up on Leo Affairs. They can just see how, these are police officers talking about other police officers, which makes it even more scary because of the immaturity level. So, they say other nasty things that I'm not going to say.
Yeah, media's done some stories also on her.
Well, Miami New Times did a story, and they went from the part about the whistleblowing, and then of course once we got arrested, they didn't ask me for an interview or anything, and I would have been more than happy to give them one.
It's a very complicated story to really grasp.
Just to give you an idea and give the viewers an idea of what you're dealing with. One of the individuals that was arrested from her complaint, who's still currently working in a police capacity, by the way, he hasn't been convicted yet, used to be a Miami police officer. And he actually resigned while he was being investigated, and the allegation that was made against him was that he was raping prostitutes on duty.
I remember that guy.
Essentially, one of the prostitutes that came in and filed a complaint against him actually gave over a napkin to the investigators that contained some of his DNA, and the investigation was sustained, and he was disciplined by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, and I think his certification was suspended for several years. Well, now he is, fast forward to today, working for Golden Beach, arrested now because he was stealing from Golden Beach. He's still working there, pending his trial.
And took his promotional exam.
When you got people.
What's his name?
His name is Omar Paez. When you got individuals working like that, my personal opinion is somebody who's working and using a position that the community entrusts them to work in as a public servant, and they're using and abusing that authority associated with that position to go out there and rape prostitutes. That person has no business.
He was never convicted of that?
He was not criminally charged because, from what I read in the reports, the state attorney's office thought that the victim, the prostitute, would not have been a credible witness. But the internal affairs investigation that was conducted against him was sustained, so he was found guilty in the investigation. And the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, who is the one that licenses police officers in the state of Florida, did suspend his certification for an extended period of time.
Which is all public record.
So, in my personal opinion, if he was not criminally prosecuted, at least, at minimum, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement should have done their due diligence and revoked his certification. An individual like that has no purpose in working in that type of a capacity.
Yeah.
And to say that a prostitute isn't a credible witness, I mean, that's what she's doing. Why is she not credible? I mean,
Right.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to make the situation a little bit lighter, but it's true. She was victimized, no matter what, no matter what her job was.
Well, and the fact that, he's having sex on duty, whatever,
In a
even if it was
church parking
consensual,
lot.
whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a church, right?
School
Oh, I'm
parking
sorry,
lot.
a
School
school
parking lot?
in Coconut Grove.
Okay.
Yeah, but she tried to come forward,
Yeah.
and that's all public record, and you can find that on FDLE's website. I think they have it where you can actually plug in the officer's name and find out. So, and if you look at all the characters in some of these police departments, you're going to find that their backgrounds are less than upstanding to be a law enforcement officer. So,
And with that note, well, that's it. That was a long episode. I hope you guys get a sense of what's going on. I hope you guys stuck it out because it was a long conversation, but they had a lot to say, and even then, there's still a lot more that they could have said, but we just want to give you guys the nuts and bolts of it. So till next time, thanks for sticking around.
Photography is not a crime.
Yes, it is a crime.